you know what? I'm actually going to contradict all these thoughts and feelings that I have, and I'm going to change, and I'm going to flip the script, and I'm going to become and do something better than I think I can by changing my attitude, changing my mood, changing my belief system, and just generally trying to have more confidence in who I am as a person and my worth and what I'm able to do. But with that comes a tremendous amount of risk. And so I think that's the other part of like managing the emotional roller coaster is to not jump ship.
What's up, buddy? You ready?
Man, sorry for being a little bit late this morning.
That's all right, man. I'm very forgiving of that because I spent a lifetime doing it.
This is true, but hey, I got up, ran a little bit late this morning, but got in my swim and have the goggle eyes for the rest of the day, and I'm feeling good. It's good to start out on Monday with a swim. And I got to be honest, I got a little work to do in the pool.
Oh, really? No.
Oh, yeah. I got a little bit of work to do in the pool. I did a little 1,000-yard and 100-yard time trial to kind of gauge where I'm at. I do that like for myself every, 8 to 12 weeks. But my swimming has been with Move and other things. I mean, honestly, training is just, training has been like way on the back burner. And probably from like February to like, May, it was... I don't want to say it was non-existent, but it was on like the back burner of back burners with just a lot of things going on with work and the business and family. And then my mom took that spill and just had a lot of energy elsewhere. But I got the train rolling again. And swimming is always kind of my like barometer in terms of where my fitness is and where my focus is. Because for me, swimming is easily the one that I'm the best at. It's the one where I can kind of pick up things and still be kind of, front end of the age group or front end of the whole field. And so it's harder for me sometimes to get motivated to do that because, even though that's not really justifiable, but I justify it in my head in that swimming is like, all right, I could swim 3 or 4 days a week and I might have my average 100 times drop by like 2 or 3 seconds, maybe. Where I could spend other time on, cycling and running. But there's so many other benefits of swimming that, that go into running and even cycling. And so I kind of always know that that's kind of a good gauge for how focused I am and how dialed in I am on my training. And so I like to kind of see what kind of 1,000-yard pace I'm holding and then what my 100-yard pace is as well, because kind of what we talked about on the last Thursday podcast, when you kind of build like a power profile, you want to look at like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 minutes, 5 minutes, 20, 30, and so on to figure out if that person's really good at short or really good at long. And that's how you can kind of differentiate between what that person needs to work on. And so I did a little 1,000-yard TT today and then rested for a little bit and then did a 100-yard TT. And I got a little bit of work to do. Endurance is there. 100-yard speed, lacking.
Yeah.
Major lacking. I was like I was a 109 this morning. And earlier last year before Texas 70.3, I did a 58. So I'm a little bit off. But that's okay. That's not necessarily the most crucial thing when it comes to the and I'm doing right now. But anyway, that's why I'm late, but I got it in. I'm feeling good. I hope you had a good weekend, and congratulations to everyone who got out there and raced all over the place. We had tons of athletes racing on our team all over the place, and as usual, we had a lot of athletes, and I know a lot of our listeners towed the line at always a scorching hot Muncie 70.3. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. Welcome aboard the Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 285.
285. Yeah.
Man.
I'm Mike. He is Coach Robbie. I'm the age grouper and somewhere in my 50s.
Somewhere in your 50s? Is that how we're doing things now? Okay, well, then not that case.
Over
that
50.
Case, I'm somewhere in my 30s.
Yeah, but you're right on the edge, dude.
You gotta do that.
Right on the edge of that 4-0.
No, dude, I'm age group upping it next year, 40, 44.
Yeah, once you get to 40, it's pretty much over, dude.
Yeah, that's what I can.
Hey, quickly back to that point you were making, because you know me, I always like to look at what you're saying and think about some other things. So it's like, for me, I feel pretty usually year round, kind of comfortable with the bike.
Mhm.
And it's sort of one of those things where, like you were just saying, you probably don't feel like, any stress about going out there and completing the swim or anything like that. But what happens is we get out in there, and if you're not in that shape that you need to be, you find yourself trying to be like you used to be, and then all of a sudden you're pushing it over the limit and you're not quite in that shape. And then it spills over into the next event and or the rest of the race. So I think that's a really good point. It's like, swimming is one of those for most people, it's probably the hardest to actually get into really good swim shape. In a lot of ways, because I just think most people aren't used to they don't have that DNA background for swimming,
Yeah.
And it's one thing to kind of get to the point where you can finish the swim, but it's quite another to be in like really good swim shape.
It's a whole different ball game. I mean, and honestly, like and that's like why, swimming is so important. Having good technique is important because, I've got fairly good technique because I've been doing it for so long, but that's where you can kind of mitigate a lack of fitness, in the short term, just only in the interim, not long, because as like the workout gets longer, you get slower because your technique falls because you don't have that muscular endurance. But yeah, it's so true. I mean, it's a lot of, it's a cascade, and we've always talked about that, why swimming is so much more important. And as usual, we always talk about the Muncie swim course was this last week, and as we've always said, and I'll say it again, Muncie and Ohio coming up are traditionally incredibly slow swims. And everybody always likes to jump on the fact, well, it's probably long. Well, it's not necessarily long in terms of the distance. Now there is a variable because sometimes and I think sometimes we really forget this when we put all our money behind like Iron Track and we totally trust like where the splits line up. But the fact of the matter is like if it's a 13.6 mile split on the bike in Iron Track, but it's actually 16 miles out and they made a mistake, or it's even like a half mile off, that's a huge adjustment. So you're looking at your friends' times like, oh my gosh, they're struggling. And then you see the next one like, oh, they're back in the game again. And it's it's a 15 mile split and they actually went, like 10 miles. And so Muncie, at least a lot of times, like they'll have their timing map that you cross to say that you've had that your swim is over and it clicks over is usually kind of up the runway, which you traditionally run up this fairly long hill. So that's what makes it long, but it's still water. So you have no current, it's no wetsuit, and it's like really warm. I think it was like barely wetsuit optional at this race. Like it was in the high 70s, and the day before it was even in the low 80s. So it's just a traditionally long swim, and not long swim, just a slow swim. And so I think when you kind of compare that to the amount of time people are used to spending in the water at races now, like you've got athletes that were in like the 35 to 40 minute range at Muncie who were out of the water in 16 minutes at Chattanooga 70.3. Mm-hmm. And so so it just plays all kinds of mind tricks on you. You're like, oh, there's no way I'm going to PR today. If you're that person who compares it, obviously the swim was short in Chattanooga, and then it's also downstream, and it was wetsuit. So you like take all those factors, and then this is just a more like, this is the swim, and that's where, swimmers should, hopefully pick courses like this, that are swim heavy in terms of the importance of it, and it's just more difficult. But take into account being in the water an extra 25 minutes and the amount of energy you're spending, and then how things work, and that again, it's all about the cascade of events and being in good shape. And I got a lot of flack from athletes that are doing Ohio 70.3 because they're like, why are we continuing to do all this swimming? Like the whole, the park is flooded. There's, it's like up to like the highway. They're like, there's no way we're having the swim. Like, why are we? And like, just wait. I got faith. I got faith in Ken Hammond. And last week they reopened the park and it's like full on. So, it's just, again, there are races. I'm not trying to say it's equal in all races. Like a race like Louisville and Chattanooga, where it's downstream, the demands of the day are totally different in the swim than it would be at a race like Wisconsin or Lake Placid.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of, just real quick, is this like the quickest we've like hopped into a podcast without like random chit chat?
It's pretty close, but I do want to back out of this for a minute.
Okay,
And,
I figured as much.
can I just say something? You know, like I want to throw this out to people. Like, I order a lot of stuff unfortunately on Amazon, just quick hitters. You know, dang, I need that, I need this, I need that, and I swear my ordering rate is about 50% success. And that's not because of them necessarily. It's just because I don't research enough, like the size of a certain apparatus that I might need. I'm like, yeah, that looks like the right one. And it gets here.
Apparati?
Apparati. Like, for example, like grill plates, or like I ordered some replacement grill plates, and they're just not the right ones. They just got here the other day. And I ordered, by mistake, I ordered 2 USB port hubs instead of one, and I meant to order another piece. So I was thinking, man, there must be for somebody out there, there's got to be a side business just waiting to happen here. You know, where you could like literally go knocking door to door and say, hey, I'll buy your old Amazon bad orders for half off. Because
half the time, and I know this.
Who ships anything back?
And the thing is that sometimes, depending on how cheap it is, they just tell you to keep it.
Oh, really?
Yes, like there's been several times Allie's like, hey, you know, I ordered it wasn't even from Amazon, but I think it was something from like Wayfair or whatever. I can't keep track of all the boxes that arrive at our house, but it's you know, we did just move, so you know, we're rearranging and we're giving away, so we gave away a lot of stuff this last weekend, but they like sent like a slightly damaged, like, I don't know, decorative apparatus. And they were like, hey, just keep it. We'll refund you your money. And it's like barely dented. Like we could probably like put in, you know, a couple minutes of like, you know, hammering, and it'd be exactly the shape that we want it to be. So now we got it for free. And so there's no telling like how many times it happens, but it does. It happens a lot. And I encourage everyone out there not to participate in Amazon Prime Day. Only purchase things that you really truly need, not just things that you vanity want. I know I got caught my wife like already searching Amazon today, and I was like, get off. We don't need anything else. We're trying to minimize. We're trying to get rid of things. But yeah, anyway, we can always hop back into the triathlon talk and quit bashing Amazon. There goes that sponsorship.
All right, anyway, I was thrown out there for somebody who wanted a business idea for somebody if they need it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Word on the street is you had somewhat of an emotional roller coaster this weekend.
Oh, what? I mean, I think this is a really good microcosm of everything, and I thought maybe it would help some people because, first of all, you know, you saw me swimming last week, I guess. My swim's okay. Going back to your original point.
It's better than listen, your swim has come such a long way from where it used to be when we first started working together. And even it's come a long way in the last, I think, year to year and a half, ever since you've kind of had one of your aha moments at one of our camps watching. You're clicking it. I mean, you're definitely when you say, "Hey, man, I crushed a swim," it's like justifiable now. It's not just chit chat.
Yeah, but
no, your swim has been on.
Anyway, opposite of you, I think for me anyway, I have more speed than endurance right now. So, and I've been also working on that little bit of that gallop stroke, you know, that we were kind of talking about, and I think it definitely makes me faster. My right side is so much stronger, and I have more flexibility in my right arm, and so I've been working on that. But I got out of the pool on Thursday night. I started feeling like a little bit of, soreness in my chest and my back, like just the right side. And it was kind of with me on Friday. I had a swim and a run day on Friday that was going to be the precursor for a massive weekend. And I kept putting the swim off on Friday because I was a little bit sore and I didn't know what to do. And I thought initially I would just get rid of the run because it was so hot again and I was just kind of beat down or whatever. And I didn't want to ruin Saturday and Sunday. Mm-hmm. But I decided not to do the pool and I didn't want to completely ruin Friday. So I went for a late run. Like at 7.
Still. I mean, that's like it's funny. Like in the summer, sometimes like between 4 and like 6 and 7, it is like the hottest part of the day.
Yeah, it was certainly humid, and your dew point theory, all that stuff was in play, and the run felt fine. But what I realized was, I ran like about an hour, and my bike ride started in 10 hours. It was a 5 hour bike, so I literally had 10 hours.
Whoa! You rode a 5-hour bike
This weekend. Well, I got 4.5.
Okay, all right. All right. That's okay.
But in my mind,
that falls in line with triathlon rounding up. Yeah, I went out and ran like 6 points. I ran a 10-miler.
Well, no, but I'm saying that I in my mind, I'm gonna do the 5-hour bike.
All right, got it.
And frankly, I'm at a different place just mentally, because normally I would have been looking at that 5-hour bike and seeing a 3 there. That's just what it would have happened. But
can I tell the audience who don't know you nearly as well as I do, and this is the last time I'll interrupt you. Mike, this is how Mike used to be. Well, I had 5 hours on the schedule, but what I did do is I did 3 hours, and dude, I got a lot of hills in. And so 3 hours, got a lot of hills, and you gotta think that's worth 5.
It's got to be close to 5, right?
That's close to 5. Yeah, so that's.
Then I would say something like
the Mike Tricalc.
Yeah. Then I would say something like, well, with all the crowd out there, that's worth another hour for me.
Exactly.
And I got done with 3, and I knew I could do 5, so that to me was good enough. And that was kind of like how I handle the bike a lot. But this time I was thinking, I got to get out there and do 5, because I'm trying to really stick with the plan. I'm really doing my best. And I got to tell you, man, well, only having, probably 6 hours of sleep, getting out to the trace, and plus I'm riding the trace, after a run at 6, 7 o'clock at night the night before. And I got out to the trace, and from the moment I clipped in, to the moment I got to McDonald's after my ride, I felt like dog meat, man. It was just awful. Like, terrible. Like, I don't know how I even got 4.5 hours in, because it was one of those deals. Like, imagine this, because my buddy didn't show up, or he couldn't make it, so I was out there flying solo. And you've seen me at the beginning of some of those rides where I'm like, I got to bag this. I'm
so
done.
Grumpy, dude.
Grumpy.
You are so grumpy.
I wasn't necessarily grumpy, but I just didn't have it. At all. I couldn't get it. And I didn't get it the whole day, but somehow I pulled out 4.5 hours. And I was absolutely shelled, dude. And I bagged the short run later that day, and I was like, I don't know if I can get on that bike again. Because the next day, for some reason on that schedule, the next day had 4-hour easy bike. So I'm thinking to myself, is there any way I'm going to be able to ride that bike tomorrow? And I got up, and I walked around for about 4 hours that morning looking at my bike, going, there's just no way. Somehow I pulled it together and I'm like, I'm not going to the trace today, but I'm going to go to the lab and maybe ride an hour and a half or something, some kind of spin out.
Yeah.
And I got over to the lab, same thing. My legs felt just like they are just like not
Dead.
there. Yeah, I got nothing. I can't even, get going what I normally do over there, any kind of speed or anything like that. After 4 miles, I started to turn back home, and then I was like, nope, let's do it. Anyway, long story short, I got about an hour and 20 minutes in, and I looked back. I was taking a corner over there. I looked back, and there's this guy riding my wheel.
Oh,
and then
there's the spark you needed.
I'm like, so check this out. He is like, you think of like old school Tour de France. Picture that. This guy's like 6'7", Ichabod Crane kind of looking dude. He's got like one of the gray goatee kind of cycling goatee, a old red V-neck kind of cycling jersey with a white cap on, and like white shoes and ankle socks. He had the whole deal, like those tan wicker basket looking glove things.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He's riding. I think he was riding like a 1978 Motobacan, like one of those things. I mean, he had it all. I was like, and I'm shirtless in Aero, and I'm like, man, I feel he probably thinks I'm disparaging his sport.
Oh, for sure.
Oh man, I didn't know what to do. So anyway, he's riding. I'm like, come along, let's go. And anyway, he kind of the next straightaway, he just kind of like super spins right past me, and he's like taking off from me, and I'm like, all right, I'm not letting this guy. And then all of a sudden I don't know. We rode together for the next almost 2 hours.
Jeez.
I
So
ended up getting.
you made a friend,
He never said a word to me.
and you didn't say a word to him.
I wanted to talk to him.
Beautiful.
I came up one time.
Let's be honest, man. That's the best kind of training partner.
Oh, he was outstanding.
We don't need to talk. Okay. We just need to have like that common understanding of we're training at the same time, but we are not having a conversation. This time
for
to
sure.
quiet something to work.
So I pulled up alongside him once, and I took out my earbuds, and I was like ready to talk, I slowed down a little bit, and he came up on the right side of me and just kept going, never looked at me. I was like, this guy's outstanding.
He probably thinks you're a millennial.
He did, and that's why when I pulled up alongside him the next time, I kind of did the old school, like I was checking my pulse on my neck, like I wasn't using gadgets.
Yeah, and you're like, hey man, these aren't you saw the wire coming out of your earphones, and you wanted to make sure you didn't think you had AirPods in.
Yep.
Like, listen, man, I got wires, baby. I got wires. Me and you were on the same level. So you did it. You went out for the double ride, which can we say is one of the more underrated weekend approaches out there. Is the standard double ride weekend. Great use of time, great boost of fitness, and it is absolutely essential for athletes taking on hilly and long courses. So talk a little bit about like how you salvaged your way out of that emotional roller coaster and kind of what it was, and then I'll piggyback off that because I've got two pretty good examples of one and roller coaster throughout an entire training block that was following a really bad bike wreck with a car, and then also a one that happened in a race yesterday. But so I mean, talk to me a little bit about like how what do you was it that you took yourself out of your funk by not thinking about it anymore? Because I think sometimes that's super common is like athletes will, I mean, example, like I left the house yesterday morning to go on a run, and I was weighing myself before the run, and I was going to weigh myself after to kind of see what my sweat rate is right now to make sure I'm taking enough fluid. And I got on the scale, and I was like, I'm just like, yeah, I can't lose weight for the life of me right now. And so I was super discouraged. And then I was like, well, I did have a lot of pizza last night, so that's kind of going to factor that in. And I wanted to do like the Mike Charlie thing. Like, well, I had pizza last night and a burger on Monday, so like I'm still like 6 pounds down. Okay, that makes sense.
That makes sense.
So I was just super grumpy, and I left the run, and it was a little bit cloudy here in Chattanooga, but it was only like 77, but the humidity was 95, and the dew point was like 73, and I was doing some intervals, and I just felt like, and I preach this all the time, but sometimes it's also good to remind myself, like I'm looking at my watch and I don't, I only look at time for the warm up and cool down. If I'm doing intervals, I'll sometimes glance at it, but I don't look. I just look at the time on my watch, and then I'll look at it later. And I was just thinking like, God, this is so rough. How am I going to be able to do these intervals? I did the first one, and like halfway through, I was like, you know what? I should probably just bag it and just like cruise the rest of the day. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go a little bit longer. And then as soon as I finished the first interval, I was like a totally different person. Mm-hmm. I felt pretty good. I was like, you know what? That was a little conservative. Let me see if I can push. And so I had a total of 4 or 5 minute kind of hard intervals on the run, and I was able to descend on all of them. And it was just like, it was a total tale of two different runs. And the biggest thing was just getting out of my own way and like my own mood. And like, cause I think that's so much of like our attitude and our mood so much like dictate and determine how our workouts go before we even like do anything that raises our heart rate. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we take ourselves out of that, like, you with that guy. And I think that's also the reason, like, why doing things with groups and stuff, like, you're able to do things that you wouldn't normally do, because not because you don't have the fitness or because you don't have the ability, because you take yourself out of your own mind. And that's what that kind of, I just truly believe that kind of tension, that belief system holds people back and ends up really not allowing people to reach their full potential. And so I think like that emotional roller coaster of the weekend was... first off, I think the biggest win for you was just getting on your bike on Sunday. Yeah. Because most people wouldn't even have got on it. They would have made up their decision on Saturday that they weren't already going to do that ride on Sunday. and that it felt so bad that, oh, you know what, I just shouldn't do it. And we so commonly make those, like, for the good and the bad, like we make those prisoner of the moment decisions, and we end up staying at the bottom of the roller coaster in the valley when we could have just let it continue to ebb and flow and like ended up cresting and continuing on.
I agree. Yeah, it was very difficult, and I mean we've talked about this a lot of times in the past about how, you know, if you have a workout that you don't think you can handle, whether it's an interval or a hill workout or any of this kind of stuff, just put the shoes on and go for a slight little jog and just see how it feels. My thing, because I felt like I did not, even though I got out there, I was riding for 15, 20 minutes, and I was like, man, this is just not going to happen. And I don't know how, I just kept coming around those laps, and I was like, all right, one more lap, and then I would try, you know, a little high cadence stuff, or I would, you know, get an arrow and push it a little bit. I was just trying different ways of, you know, engaging my thing. And I know that we had a podcast a few ago where we talked about not drinking a lot of water to on a race that takes up real estate in your stomach if it's not going to be, you know, a body fluid sort of balance kind of thing. And I honestly, this was a little bit contrary to that, but I think it was partially because of the diet I've had in the last few days, and I was probably salt heavy and who knows what. And I actually went over and drank a ton of like a slammed about a bunch of straight water, and then I kind of diluted. Actually, what I did is I sort of diluted one of my bottles, and then just started drinking water for a few minutes, and I don't know if that had something to do with it. The chemistry of the body is such a weird thing, but like what I did think about when I was out there was, even though my legs were dead, they weren't tired. And so what I kept running, I was just thinking, this is in my head. There's something going on in my head. It's not like letting go of something, or it's like holding back or whatever. So that's what I kept thinking about. I was like, man, I got to get out of my head right now. And I think maybe that guy helped me. And because the weirdest thing about that whole day was that by the end of that, I ended up putting in about 50 miles. Where I was at mile 4 going, I'm going home. And at mile 50, I was like, I could go another 50 miles right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I really felt like I felt like my strongest moments were at the end of that ride. And it just took so long. And I was really thinking, too, about what you said a few podcasts ago about how when you have that fatigue, how much longer it takes the blood and body to get going. Sometimes it takes working out on fatigue legs and fatigue body, just it takes you longer to warm up. And I kept running that thought through my head too, and I don't know, by the end, and then of course I was, you know, the prisoner of the moment. I was like, maybe I should ride another 50 right now, but I skipped the Saturday run. It was 2 easy runs following these long bikes, and I decided that I got off the bike and I waited, you know, several hours, and then I was going to go out and do that short little 25-minute run. I ended up putting them both together because I just felt really good and just took it real easy and ran both those. I ran about 45 minutes easy, and game changer. Like, I went from quitting triathlon to now I'm back in the game in about 48 hours.
But that's training, and that's also racing, and it's just managing, it's just managing the overall emotion and mental demands that we have, like every single day. You know, like people wreck and quit training weeks on Tuesdays, you know, because they had 1 or 2 bad days. And, you know, I think that it's really one of those things that and we always talk about this, is that don't ever get too high and don't ever get too low. And so many times we allow ourselves to go both directions. So the rise and the fall seem just absolutely, you know, enormous. When the reality is, if you always really try to stay even keel, even if things are great, then even things are not good, then you're not going to feel so much of an ebb and flow, you know, and then understanding where these emotions are coming from, where this mental shift is coming from. Is it all physical? Is it reality? Is it based on, you know, other stressors in your life? because a lot of times we allow other stresses in our life to dictate and kind of rear their ugly head in training, and we just immediately think it's training. They were like, but I should feel great today. Wait a minute, aren't you under like a huge amount of job stress and you barely slept and things are rough at home? Why the hell would you expect your fitness to be great? And so I think that that's sometimes that we tend to forget about. And even like I had an athlete yesterday who has gone through all kinds of different, or two kind of stories that I wanted to kind of piggyback on your talk, was that there was an athlete who has traditionally in the past had some like just totally like uneven patches in training, and just kind of, and lately, ever since she's kind of found her way and her groove, she's been like on a mission. And so I texted her yesterday after an Olympic, and I said, "Hey, how'd the race go?" And she said, "It was awesome. The swim sucked, but apparently it was pretty rough for everyone due to the strong current. Honestly, I was so frustrated, I seriously considered giving up triathlon. Then I went on to have an amazing bike and run. Total time was 3:42:42. That's almost an hour PR on the same course from last year."
Whoa.
And so, like, if you just take, like, if you condense that, that's like the ultimate emotional roller coaster. I want to quit triathlon because the swim was terrible, and I had this like because again, like that is the ruin and the detriment and the pitfall of expectation. Is that you have this, because I even had this thought like when I got off the scale, and I was like, I was being so hard on myself, and I was thinking, you know what? Just think about how we work with like the technology and our watches and our bike computers, that let's say this scale, is perfect. And then I go to a different scale and we buy a different scale, and for some reason it's not calibrated correctly and it makes me 10 pounds heavier. Or we buy one that's calibrated off but the same, and it's 10 pounds less. I get on it, even though I haven't changed at all, period. My perception of myself has changed based on something that has totally no validity, but that I'm just taking it at face value and what it means to me. And we do that so often in racing, and that we have this like, because you see athletes, they get out of the swim and they just think, for whatever reason or whatever expectation they had, that I'm going to do this in a swim. And then when they come out slower, it's like their day is over. And so this athlete was saying, like, I was considering giving up. I was done, but I kept going, and I went on having an amazing biker run, and then obviously a huge PR that day. And so that resiliency, and I think so many times we take like the word like resiliency in life and in training and in triathlon as something really, really bad has to happen for us to make it great. But I think resiliency in kind of its truest form, at least in my opinion, in my experience, is I think it's also not allowing things to get too great. Like I think resiliency is also best used in being resilient to not allowing my emotions to dictate every move that I make, because we so many times make. I mean, everybody. I mean, right now, currently, as we're recording, there are probably millions of Americans making emotional decisions and buying something that they absolutely can't afford on Amazon Prime right now. but they're doing it anyway because they're letting the emotions and the like a mob mentality of I have to today, I have to be, and like just think about how many mistakes you've made in your life based on working off just emotions, and you have to take it out of it. You have to be resilient and resistant to allowing those emotions, the grand ones and the terrible ones, to really, really dictate the decisions and your outcomes. And you just let yourself and what you really want to believe and what you want to accomplish dictate that. And so I just thought that was also a great example of just that emotional roller coaster that we always feel in racing. And the other one was an athlete who did his very, very first 70.3 yesterday, and ended up on a podium. It was his first time. Ended up at like 5:43 on November 20. I don't know, November 7th, I think. he had or November 9th, he was in a collision with a car on his bike and suffered like really, really bad concussion. And he was out from basically no swimming and most riding for over a month. And then it wasn't until the first week of January we were able to start walking very, very slowly with some incline on the treadmill. Then we started to add in like 30-minute rides, and he didn't run at all, like legit run until February. And we couldn't swim because like getting vertical was really, really messing with, or horizontal rather, was really, really messing with kind of his head and giving him kind of nausea and just, all these symptoms that you can have after a concussion. And we spent like the next 3 months, like barely getting over only a few times got over 5 hours of training. And it wasn't with no swimming. And it wasn't until March, that we were able to like even think about adding swimming, and we added his first swim on April 1st, and then things started to click, and then here you go, second week of July, and he's turning out a 70.3. But the emotional roller coaster that he went on from, and to be fair, like it made it more difficult because we were working together for probably like 2 weeks. And he's all ready and raring to go and like ready to see some changes, and all of a sudden it's like massive setback.
Oh man!
Now I can't do anything, and like I'm just now I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when I'm going to get over. And like concussion symptoms aren't one of those things like hey, you broke this or you strained this, you're going to have like 6 or 8 weeks to come back. It's like you never know. You got to have headaches, nausea, just not feeling well. And so we really had to just kind of take things literally day to day, week to week, and rest probably way more than he wanted to from December to basically March. When you're already telling yourself, I'm going to be, man, this is going to be it. My first 70.3, because you'll remember how we trained. Like we were all guns blazing, for your very first one. And so to have like that emotional roller coaster of like, I'm so far behind. I can't. I want to go, but I can't. And this really sucks. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this. And even up to the point to where I think it was, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks out, 2 weeks after the race. This is pretty much what everybody says. It's like 2 weeks after the race, they do a run, like a short little run, and they're like, I have no idea how I'm going to be able to run 13 miles off the bike. I can't think of like how it's going to be done. And then they do it. But it's just managing your emotions and figuring out like what is real and what is not. What is fiction, what is nonfiction, what is just the day, what is just my mood, and then why. And then, so oftentimes like, and again, this goes with training and in life, it's like we let one thing ruin like 10 other things. Just from the mere fact that we are letting this mood kind of run everything that we do. And then we make decisions, then we get grumpier, and then we make more decisions when we're grumpy about those. And that's just the way that we do and the way that we work. And so I think that like being able to manage that emotional roller coaster and really keeping an even keel and allowing yourself opportunities for good things to come, or giving yourself more time for good things to arrive or good thoughts to arrive. Like, you would have never had that day if you hadn't put your cycling shoes on. And if you had quit 10 minutes earlier, you never would have continued on for 2.5 hours. And so I think that we always have these opportunities where just getting in the pool, or just getting on your trainer, or just putting on your run shoes, like just that small action can lead to something that is going to totally change your week. It could totally change your mindset. But if you don't do those things, then you're just allowing your mood, because like a lot of people say like, oh, well, mood follows action, and I think that's true, but also action follows mood too. And so like they're both the same. It just depends, I think, where you are in terms of, I don't think many people have been like super, super grumpy. Like they're grumpy, they go into a workout, they do it, and they leave like even grumpier. That like rarely, if ever, happens. Usually you go into work on a bad mood, you leave it being like, that was being an idiot. I feel so much better about myself. And so I just think that managing that emotional roller coaster in training and doing it well and not getting too high and getting too low is also what's going to set you up for major success on race day, because race day is the epicenter of all emotional roller coasters. In I'm going to conquer the world and be a professional when you put your goggles on, to getting out of the swim and 30 miles on a bike, you're like, I can't believe I signed up for this. My butt hurts. This is the worst thing ever. I'm never doing triathlon ever again. To coming out of T2 and you feel like Usain Bolt and you're running like 7-minute flat. And then at mile 17, and you're like, I got nothing. I got to walk. I'm going to walk it home, and I'm never doing one of these ever again. To crossing the finish line, you're like, where do I hit register again? Take all my money. I'm in this for life. Yeah. And so, like, you have all those, but like within every decision that matters is also like 730 small, minute choices. And it's the accumulation of all those that end up making these huge decisions, and not just allowing these small choices that might be bad turn into like major training, weekly, monthly, season wise, to really alter the landscape of what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah,
man. A lot of people, like the emotional part of outside of triathlon, I think is such a huge factor. A lot of times, at least with me, I feel like there's a lot of subconscious things going on in my brain, and it's affecting my mood. And I was like I said, I didn't feel bad this weekend. I didn't feel like, I felt fairly strong, but I just felt flat. And I don't know what was going on, but a lot of times I think that that's what happens, is that you have something on your mind that's not allowing you to be in the moment or release yourself into the flow of the workout or whatever it is. And I don't know. I mean, like I get at that Wisconsin, I'm riding the Natchez Trace Saturday, and it was all I could do to put in like 4.5 hours out there. And it's so difficult to think that theory of today's not race day is one that's so hard to let go, because I'm riding that going, man, I just did roughly the amount of gain or whatever at Wisconsin. And I'm just thinking to myself, how can I do? I'm just not in Wisconsin shape, man. There's just no way I can do that, But like the week before, it was a whole different story, and then maybe next week will be a whole different story. But getting out of that idea of like comparing every workout to the race is a really, I think it can really wreak havoc on your emotions, because you're like, man, this is not what I was thinking I could do up there or whatever. Because I'm going super slow and taking breaks and the whole 9 yards, and it's just part of the process.
It's one of those things where I think you should always ask yourself, like, all right, what is dictating my versions of, am I prepared? Am I ready? Is my fitness there? Am I going to do well? Like, what is dictating that? Is it your belief system? Is it your mood? Is it where you are this very moment? Or is it like the overarching, view from 30,000 feet that's like, I've got this, and not letting one workout demolish you in terms of, there's no way I can do this. I can't imagine being able to run. How am I going to be able to do this when all you did was have a bad day? It's like I've rarely come across an athlete, like very, very rarely do I come across an athlete that does a workout and they're like, I nailed this today. I know I'm going to crush this race. Usually it's like a 30-minute run in the heat of the day when they're super tired and they're like, I have no idea how I'm ever going to complete this race ever. I just don't think I could do it. And I'm like, hello, like, look what you did, like, I don't know, 3 days ago. And it's like, but that's what we do. Is like and I think I do. I believe that it's also kind of like your body, not your body's, your mind's and your emotions way of like self-preserving, that kind of that safety switch of, well, if I told myself a few times like it wasn't going to happen, then the devastation, if it doesn't happen, won't be nearly as great. Like I think that's just the kind of that's the way that some people operate too. Like that's just the way that some people operate 24/7 in that state of, I can't, I won't, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to accomplish this. When they don't, again, we talked about this in multiple podcasts, it's like you become the story you tell yourself. And so many athletes would rather be a part of and write this really crappy, shitty, like depressing ending, but be right about it, than they would to be like, you know what, I'm actually going to contradict all these thoughts and feelings that I have, and I'm going to change, and I'm going to flip the script, and I'm going to become and do something better than I think I can by changing my attitude, changing my mood, changing my belief system, and just generally trying to have more confidence in who I am as a person and my worth and what I'm able to do. And but with that comes a tremendous amount of risk. And so I think that's the other part of like managing the emotional roller coaster is to not jump ship, to not do something totally different, and make this decision, or, like it's like shifting roller coasters. Like you're like, oh, well, so-and-so is doing this, so I might jump over here and do that with them. That'll make me feel better. That's what I should do. Because you're going to have highs and you're going to have lows. It's just how you manage them and the severity of both. Because, we always talk about things like an 80%, 20% approach. 10% of the time, your workouts are going to be absolutely god-awful. The other 10% of the time, you're going to feel like you could crush the world and go pro. The other 80% are just kind of are what they are. But what happens is most athletes take those outlying 10% ones and give those the value of the 80%. And that's what happens. And that's when your season and when your race and when your training, it becomes dictated by the outliers rather than looking at your whole entire body of work and what you've been able to be consistent with and how you've been able to truly perform and what you need to be able to actually do. And then having the belief that I can do this, I can do A, B, and C. Therefore, I know I can accomplish this. So the biggest thing, the biggest lesson I could say is like, don't let the outliers on both ends dictate and be the message that what's a better way to say that? Don't let those 10% outliers be the only message that you hear. It's terrible and it's awesome. There's so much more in between that really is the fabric of who you are and your training and everything else. That's it. Like we're like when you die, I'd really highly doubt everyone's going to come to your funeral and be like, you know what, there's this really great thing that he did, so we should laud him for this. And there's this really terrible thing that he did, so we should just, bash him for this. It's going to be like those day-to-day, like natural things that you did of really the overall value of your life. That was that middle 80%. And that's what people are going to talk about. And that's what you're going to be remembered by. And I think that's something that we just really, really forget is that, you're never your best day and you're never your worst day, because those are like ultimate outliers. You are what's in between, because that's who you are consistently. And that's what you're able to produce day in and day out and be consistent with. And just so many athletes get so wrapped up in the bad days and let that accumulate into just deafening and paralyzing every amount of belief and ability to perform at a specific level. It just gets drowned out. It just gets drowned out and ultimately erased from existence.
It's a good way to look at it, man. Just show up. You got to keep showing up.
I told you yesterday I was watching. You're not a tennis guy or a sports guy, it seems, anymore, but I was watching Wimbledon yesterday. I'm a tennis guy. I played in college, and it was an insanely incredible match. And if you don't like tennis, you missed a good one. But they were asking the Wimbledon champion, Novak Djokovic, like, you were down 2 match points, and he actually lost. Like, the thing is he lost more points and and way more games overall over the course of the match. And he said, overall, Roger Federer played, for the most part, played better than me today, but I was able to win the points that mattered. And he also talked about just like managing the emotions. And he's just like, he said, I know it's cliche, but you just have to believe in yourself and take it one moment at a time and one stroke at a time, and then because he was basically almost defeated, and I think it was the first time ever anyone's won the championship being down 2 match points. But it was a great example of resiliency in managing your emotions over such an enormous event on the course of the day, that where every decision is like every 5 seconds, and you have to manage that one. You can't get wrapped up in, oh well, you have to have a short memory. You got to live your life in a lot of ways in training and as an athlete, like cornerback. You just have a short memory. You get beat, you get beat. But if you keep holding on to that, you're just going to keep getting beat. It's almost like you have to have, no conscience in some ways in terms of not letting things stick with you and linger and linger and linger and linger. You don't have to forget it, but you can't attach it to yourself and allow it to kind of fester and become who you are. And the match itself was a great lesson in resiliency. And I do want to kind of share in closing something he said that I think we could all remember and be a part of. Is he won the tournament and he won Wimbledon. His son was there, but his wife and daughter were at home, and they were asking him after the match. They were like, "Hey man, like, what do you see? Like, because he's got a chance to probably be one of the greatest tennis players in the world ever to ever live, and winning as many Grand Slams as he can." And they were asking like, how do you see the next 2 or 3 years going? And he was, and one of the first things he said was, as he's a parent and obviously a father and or a husband, and he was like, it really just depends on the support I have from my family. And if they're able to support and things are able to be good, then I can continue on. And I just thought it was a really incredible take on what the value system was in terms of what needs to be cohesive and what needs to be fluid in your life in order for success to happen. And it wasn't like, oh, well, if I win a bunch of tournaments or if I'm able to improve this, athletically, it had nothing to do with his athletic ability or his athletic achievements or how to approach Grand Slams. It was, am I going to have the support and are things going to be well at home and in my personal life so I can have the ability to do these things and then succeed, not vice versa. And I just thought it was a great lesson for everybody. And it's like, for whether you're married, have kids, or don't, we all have relationships and friendships, and we all have support systems. And I just think it's so incredibly underrated, the amount of what having a great support system and feeling like that is in good synergy and that is a good balance of what that can do to propel you towards your best performance, and allowing you to kind of have that guilt-free, shame-free environment to where training and improvement and performance ultimately is able to cultivate and grow. If you don't have that, because I work with athletes a lot of the times that have incredible support systems and they just flourish, and I have athletes who have spouses or family members that are absolutely the worst when it comes to supporting them the way that they should, and it affects everything that they do. And I just think that, it's definitely not kind of in the topic of the conversation, but I just think it's a great reminder that if you have a great support system, be thankful. Share that with them. Tell them you appreciate it. Be mindful of that and the things that we ask of our family and our friends and our children. Just be mindful of the demands that we ask of them. And if you haven't thanked your wife or your husband or your kids or friends or whoever your support system is, for putting up with the hours and hours that you're away, or for just supporting you from afar, take that time, and be thankful for them, and realize that, when you go out and race, like, I guarantee you that there are a million other people, or not a million, but there's a lot of other people out there that are more stressed and more anxious and more worried about your day than you are. And that's your support system. That's your fans. That's your family. That's your kids. That's your spouse. And so I think that it's a great time of year, especially as things are heating up and races are coming at us full on every weekend. The races are getting bigger. The importance is becoming higher. The length is getting greater. Take the time, thank your family, thank your friends, and your support system. Let them know that they're appreciated. Do something nice for them, and make sure that on race day they're set up for success just like you are.
That's pretty great, man. Yeah, there's nothing like racing with support and on a clear conscience.
That's a huge one. Well put. That's a great way to say it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that wraps up podcast 285, man.
285. Thanks, as always, for joining us. Subscribe. Go back in the archives, dig deep. Like you said, we got 285 of them. We come to you twice a week. We do have a blossoming Facebook group of around 2,000 members. You can always get on Facebook and search Crushing Iron Group. If you're going to be part of that conversation, hop in. Lots of great experience, lots of great wisdom, tons of great people willing to give you their best answers with minimal to, sometimes frequent sarcasm. But, sarcasm is the core of our planet anyway. If you've never been, always go to crushingiron.com. It's our one-stop shop. It is you need to know about what we do, how we operate, what we provide in terms of training camps, swim analysis, our blog, videos, coaching and training packages. Everything that we have is available there for you to peruse and take advantage of. And as always, if you have any questions directly for Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com is where you can find him. And you can always reach out to me at c26coach@gmail.com.
I like it, buddy.
I like it. And if you're going to Ohio 70.3,
oh, yeah,
we will be there. Hit us up. Mike and I will both be there at the Staybridge Suites, Columbus Polaris, at the C26 Satellite Hub. Come, let us know you're coming. We're happy to see you. Looking forward to a great race and supporting a solid event. So taper well, and we'll see you up there. Other than that, that is it. Have a good rest of the week, and we will catch you on Thursday.
Yep. We're not racing Ohio, are we?
I'm not.
Yeah, me either. But we'll be around to support everybody.
Be there. Exactly.
We'll be wide open for Q&As. Maybe not. I'll be in the
I was going to say you're committing
workout room on the treadmill.
That's my boy.
I'm bringing my trainer. No, I'm not.
Good. I might.
You might? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a great day, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday.
See you, man.